Hey, Tom.
Hey, Michael. How are you?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Monday.
All day.
It's Valentine's Day. Did you not figure that out when you did that? Did you not hear about it?
Oh, yeah. More than once.
Tom's getting set up over here. He's wondering if you're in hot water.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how well that small bag in the car does when you get it home.
Yeah.
So do we need to sign up to speak or anything along that line or anything we need to do?
It's not a public hearing. So,
Okay.
I mean, if you want to speak, when your stuff comes up, I'm sure they're going to let you speak.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure we're following protocol. Two
Oh,
more
yeah.
weeks of this and we're done, huh?
What, of winter?
No, he said today 2 more weeks we're going to be done with these meetings.
Oh, yeah, it's my life. So,
Yeah.
When does tennis start? That's what I want to know.
Next week.
As soon as it's 55 degrees, Mike.
All right. Hello.
Where are you on?
Pretty good.
I'm on Zoom.
Oh, you went to him already? Is this the meeting?
I do.
Well, I'm going to mute this.
Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've already created the link for next month, so I can send it to you tomorrow. Okay. You bet. Sure. Yeah. Once you're on there, I'll switch it over.
One of them off.
Yeah. Great. Thanks.
Well, this is a bigger screen, Tom. You want to just come over with me? I just want to make sure that I have this thing set up.
Injuries.
Muting?
Yeah.
There. Can you hear us, Mike?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you hand that stringer over to Pat?
Yeah. Pat's got the stringer right away.
All right. I just haven't heard whether or not he obviously doesn't have it done yet. So. All right.
Yeah.
Not that I need it. I'm just kind of
tracking it down,
keeping tabs on it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm surprised he isn't.
I'll ask him about it.
Isn't done with it.
You know, he gave me the old, well, I don't know how to do this. Do you want to do this for me? I go, no, it takes like an hour. I'm not going to do it for him.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense once I watched the YouTube video.
I've got a stringer. So Mike restrung his racket and then he handed it off to Pat. He's going to restring his. Yeah, the YouTube video worked good, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it really saved some time.
This time, I think should be able to see both of us. Uh-oh, we froze. There we go.
I'm going to go down and get the highballs. I'll be right back.
All right. Tom's getting the highballs. You'll probably have to swing in on the way home.
If I'm already in trouble, why not?
Might as well go for broke, as they say.
That's right.
Is that your water or my water?
It's your water.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I need it. Took Lizzie for a walk down the runway just before we got here, so.
It's good.
Rodney. I forgot had that there in the round building. Here, Rodney.
Hello, gentlemen.
Mr. Shield?
Rodney, how much longer are you going to work? How old are you now?
Don't ask him that.
Yeah.
Are you getting close, or is it a while yet?
Some days I'm much closer, John.
Yeah.
Yeah. No particular date figured out yet.
Okay.
The wheels are turning.
Are they? Okay.
At least up here. I don't.
Yeah. Well, we sold our business in December, and I'll tell you, it's just brutal not having to go to work.
I'm sure it is.
I'm telling you, just to have time, you wake up in the morning, you go, what are you doing today? I'm not quite sure yet. That's pretty sweet.
Some days I wish I had that problem.
Yeah. Well, for a long, long time, I haven't had that problem. So.
Right. I understand. I understand. Oh, yeah.
You stay busy though. When the spring comes and all of a sudden you've got the mowers and all that other stuff, that airport and that to take care of. So we stay busy.
I'm pretty sure you'll find plenty to do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's the current one, Tom?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Very nice. I actually, Stephen is going to be on here.
Steve Tremlett?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he'll have this. If
Rodney,
not,
Rodney will have it up.
oh, Rodney's got it? Okay. Because I have it too. So.
We'll be able to get it up.
Good. You knew Dave Anderson died, right?
I was going to ask you whether you knew that.
Yeah.
I just happened to notice it.
Yeah, his wife called me. Yeah. So they're gonna sell. She wants to sell the airplane, obviously, after it gets a little bit nicer, so that'll move out.
Let's see my glasses.
Yep.
I was surprised by that, rezoning that property to.
Yeah, they want to do 100 instead of 50 children.
Yeah, big daycare.
I talked to her about that, and she said her daughter runs that. And then she goes, it's only for the 3 months in the summer. That's when they have kind of a big thing that got the animals and stuff like that. And she said they had so many people that wanted to do it last year, and they couldn't because they were out. Now they're not in the city, I don't think. Is that the townships still? So they have to get that through the township?
Rezone that, yeah. Yeah. So I know he'd been like sick on and off.
Oh yeah, and she had a leg problem or whatever, and he ended up having COVID, and he went into the hospital. And whether he got it in the hospital or whatever, she was furious because she wanted him to have certain medicines, and they have a certain protocol. He died in the hospital, and she was just furious. So,
John, you might want to mute for now.
Yeah.
We enjoy hearing from you, but
yeah, we're muting
for now.
Phil, I like your beard.
Thank you. It's been a lot of work to not shave.
Okay.
I woke up one day and there it was.
You must have been Rip Van Winkle to grow a beard like that.
Waiting for winter to pass.
All right, looks like we have a quorum. Let me know when you're ready, Michael.
Yep, go for it.
All right, good evening. It's Monday, February 14th, 2022. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And we do have a quorum. So the first item on the agenda would be to consider approving the minutes from the last couple of meetings, January 10th and February 7th. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Barman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Majewski. Would anybody like the minutes acted on separately or have any questions or comments about them? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Next item is City Council Representative Report. Alderperson Caravello, the bearded man.
Thank you, sir. Looks like at the January 25th, 2022 council meeting, R8 of 2022 and R9 of 2022 were approved. And at the February 8th council meeting, R27 and R28 of 2022 were all approved.
All right, any questions on the council report? Next would be the staff report. Director Shield.
Standard in your packet is just a current status of some of the projects. Certainly a number of them you're very familiar with. Weevil World's moving along. Pizza Hut has opened up to their new facility. So we've got some lingering landscaping items on a number of projects that will get completed in the spring here. But certainly there are projects that we're keeping track of going forward as well. Available for any questions if you have any.
Any questions? Hearing none. Item 5 is a zoning ordinance amendment to section 78-920. Any background information before we go into a public hearing?
Yeah, fairly straightforward. Cleaning up the language a little bit in this ordinance. Zoning Administrator Stacy has come up with some issues and references that needed to be corrected in a couple of ordinances that you'll see tonight, and therefore we submitted them for your consideration.
All right. Any questions before we close the regular hearing and open up the public hearing? Hearing none. Close the regular meeting, open up for a public hearing. I didn't see anybody signed up. Anybody wish to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and reopen for regular business. So we're looking for a recommendation to City Council for an ordinance change. Anybody willing to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion to recommend the changes to city council in this ordinance.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. One last time, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Next one is amendment to section 78-904. Anything on this one before we go into the public hearing?
Similarly, this was kind of a staff review of some ordinance suggested changes. We worked with the city attorney on these to try to highlight some changes that would be appropriate, and they're contained in this section of code that we recommend for approval.
All right, any initial questions? Hearing none, close the regular meeting, open for public hearing. I didn't see anybody signed up for this one. Anybody like to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, reopen for the recommendation to council. Anybody willing to make a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
All right, in a second.
I'll second.
Second by Barman. All right, last chance for discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 7, animal ordinance creation of section 6-16. And who would like to walk us through this one? Is this Michael's?
Yeah, I'll just give you a little background. As you know, as the mayor would know, we've been contacted by an organization that is concerned about puppy mills, if you will. And therefore, we worked with their legal team as well as our legal team to draft a regulation that prohibits puppy mills essentially in the city of Stoughton. Michael can certainly speak to more details, but I think it was a collaborative effort trying to put this ordinance together. And you'll see in your packet is actually some research or additional input from our city attorney's office related to this as well.
Any initial questions or comments or anything for Michael?
I actually have a quick question. I'm just curious if historically, if anybody can recall in the past, if there's been any sort of operation or situation regarding something like this in Stoughton in the past.
I'm not aware of any particular instance where that was the case. We've had situations where we've had numerous animals that needed to be dealt with collaboratively, but not in this particular situation. The organization that alerted us to it has been working with a number of counties throughout the state, particularly in Dane County, that I think have been successful in incorporating regulations to prevent this type of operation from occurring.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I don't recall which community it was that made a television news story about getting this their ordinance enacted. I seem to think it was either Verona or one of the South. Spring Green, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Yep, that's right. And have they had any challenges, do you know of, that to this, or?
Yeah, I think the problem was they didn't have this language in place prior to use like this starting there. And I think they lost a court battle because of not having this type of language.
I see, okay.
So what would they apply for, like a conditional use, and this protects us?
Yeah, this bans them completely.
Okay.
They're prohibited.
You've highlighted a good point, Mayor. This actually isn't part of our zoning regulations. It falls in chapter 6 of our zoning, or of our code of ordinances. And it was helped to be placed there with the city attorney's office. Instead of it being a particular land use regulation, it falls more appropriately into this code chapter.
All right, thank you for that. And then I know there was somebody signed up to speak. We don't really have a public hearing on it. And I don't know if you guys want to waive the rules and let somebody speak, I guess that's up to you.
I'm willing to waive the rules to hear.
Okay, so I think the person's name was Jamie. Are you there?
Yes. Yes, I am here.
Yeah, we just ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We usually don't do a public comment, but they're waiving the rules for you.
Sure, not a problem. I'll just keep it brief. My name is Jamie Hagenow. I am a board member for Dane for Dogs, and I just wanted to let you guys know that we appreciate you hopefully passing this ordinance and understanding that, you know, this sort of situation, once it becomes rooted in the community, is very difficult to deal with after the fact. So thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Okay, let's see. We need a motion on this one.
Yeah, this is not a public hearing because it's not a chapter 78 or it's not part of our zoning code. So a hearing is not required. So it's really just a motion to the council recommending the ordinance.
All right, anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to recommend to the council to accept this ordinance.
And I'll second.
All right, second by Caravello. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Item number 8 is a conditional use review for an indoor commercial entertainment use, a fitness center at 318 South Forest Street. Anything before we go into a public hearing?
I think I could just highlight this operation, as you might know, has been operating for some time. It wasn't discovered as a use that was not consistent with the zoning ordinance. It's a conditional use in the district. So I don't think there was any intent to try to avoid the regulations, but once it became we became aware of it, we worked with the applicant to submit the process and start this conditional use hearing process for this property.
All right, any initial questions before we go into a public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close the regular meeting, reopen for a public hearing. I didn't see anybody signed up, but does anybody wish to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and reopen for business. Any questions from commissioners on this one?
I have one brief question, and I'm not sure how they're using the facility. It looks like there is. Do they have multiple uses that they're using? Because I occasionally see some, since I live around the corner from it. And yeah, I think it's a great use as far as a fitness center for that space. I think it's a great use. But there's some vans that have like daycare or child care something on them. And I'm kind of wondering if they're using it just as like a drop-off pickup point for that. That's kind of what it looks like to me, but I'm wondering if there's any, I didn't see any mention of that in this anywhere.
I don't think we're familiar with any other use. There could be permitted uses that wouldn't be subject to the conditional use procedure in this district, but I'm not familiar with the use or the idea that you've raised. Certainly something we can have a discussion with the owner to see if there's something that we need to consider additionally.
Yeah, I think they have a day camp in there. I don't know if that's, would need a conditional use or not, but I think they do operate that out of there, and that's what the van is for. So they can transport, the kids to wherever it is they need to go. Sometimes they walk around a lot as well, especially in the summertime. You'll see them down at the gazebo.
I just wanted to bring that up to make sure that they're all good for everything that's happening over there.
Sure, and I'm sure they would want it that way as well. So if it's something they need to apply for, certainly we can talk to them about that, but I just don't know the answer.
Yeah, we're going to have to learn more about it before we can kind of make a determination, but certainly the request before us now is for the fitness use that has been operating there for some period of time and has been discovered to not be in compliance with the permitted uses. It's permitted as a conditional use in the district.
Okay, so we'll act on this and then we'll check into that, and if need be, we'll bring that back later. Any other questions or comments?
This is Todd Barman. Just a general question. I find it a little bit of a disconnect that a fitness center is considered commercial entertainment. I mean, aren't there other? I mean, wouldn't it be more of like a health kind of use versus commercial entertainment? Or is this just the way the code is written that actually is specifically listed under that category?
We don't disagree with you, but it's the way our code is written. And Michael and us we're trying to refine it as we move along. That's probably another area that'll need some better definition, along with the whole discussion about the applicability of conditional use language, period.
Gotcha. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, so we'd be looking for a motion on this one.
I'll recommend that the council approve this conditional use permit.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 And anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next one is plan development, general development plan at 51 West Development, lot 18. Anything before we go into the public hearing on this one?
Yeah, I think it's worth noting, you might recall the 51 West area. We did have an overall general development plan that was approved. And one of the stipulations to move to the SIP process without the language we've proposed now is really to have the GDP become effective. And one of the conditions of the former GDP that's in place for the balance of the properties required the lots to be created. And so the applicant has revisited the application and localized it just for lot 18. We've written in language that allows it to be for the purposes of zoning to move forward with the SIP application step, pulled out this GDP just for lot 18, included language that allows them to move forward with the SIP application upon action of this GDP approval. So in essence, this multifamily site has been viewed as part of an overall plan. And now it's really being harvested out into an individual application, if you will. And Brett or others, maybe there's Brian, if any of the applicants have a different opinion or not opinion, but input once the public hearing starts, you can certainly allow for that interaction with the commissioners.
Any initial questions from commissioners?
I do have one, because I didn't have a chance, unfortunately, to go back and look at our earlier meetings where we went over the GDP for the larger development. Is the GDP language in this pullout the same as it was before that we discussed, or have there been changes to it?
Very similar. And I think the applicants can walk through some of those minor changes from the previous submittal. And as you might appreciate, much like when you move into the SIP stage, you oftentimes find some refinements or the plan gets refined a little bit more. They've had more opportunity to look at it, so I think they'll highlight the minor changes from the original.
That would be much appreciated.
Sure.
All right, and who wants to speak on behalf of the development?
I can start. So this is Brett Riemann with Lakestone. Brian Spanos is here as well as Tammy McCullough with JLA, the architecture firm that put together the plan. So hopefully between the three of us, we can answer any questions that come up. But since we haven't really been in front of you guys too much on this project. Just a quick reminder of who we are. We've been doing some development in the city for a little while now, but Lakestone Properties out of McFarland. We generally tend to develop in the smaller communities around Madison. See a lot of the need there that hasn't been fulfilled by other developers, and I feel like we do a good job with that. We developed Nordic Ridge in 2018 and 2019, total about 77 units. And that was our really first bigger project in Stoughton. So we weren't really sure how it would lease up. So we did 140 unit at a time, and they leased up very quickly within a couple months of opening. So, and we continue to have people call us, even though we don't have anything listed for available units. People keep calling us. So it showed us there was still a need. So when Bob Dvorak approached us on this site, we did some more market analysis, and based on just our existing properties there, we felt that the need was still there for apartments in Stoughton, and we're excited to move forward on this. It's been a long time working in the background, but we appreciate everybody's help so far on this, and hopefully we can answer your questions. But big picture, we have 160 units slotted for this site. It's about 5 acres in 2 phases. Phase 1 would be 81 units, phase 2, 79 units. Built with high quality materials like we did at Nordic Ridge. It wouldn't look the same. Actually, the architect, Tammy's colleague, has some pretty cool ideas just to tie in with the Norwegian heritage of Stoughton. And we're going to name the project the Velkommen, so which is welcome for all those people who know different pieces of Norwegian heritage. But we're pretty excited about that, and we'll come up with some neat designs to it. But I don't think we have it in here just from a site plan standpoint, but we have some neat renderings that we can share as well, and hopefully tie into some of that heritage. But again, that's just big picture, a little bit who we are again, what we're looking at doing here. And then Brian and Tammy maybe can share about just a few of the changes that we're looking at amending compared to the original GDP.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. I want to give you a little background why we're doing this too. One of our goals is to really get the construction started in early spring. I know Bob Dvorak and his team's been working on the whole development as a whole, and we just want to make sure we're on track with our items to do that. And pulling this GDP out separately gives us the opportunity to start our SIP sooner, possibly get our approvals when we hope to, and get construction underway. So with that said, most of this, as you guys alluded to earlier, is very, very similar to the GDP requests and exceptions that were allowed in the original development. There are a couple key points that I bring up, and we can discuss more, that we're asking for exceptions on. Mike Stacy had gone through it and given us a review. The first one is the impervious area of the development itself. We are requesting exception for 53% impervious when it is allowed. The original GDP had a 50% impervious allowed. And the reason behind this is our experience has been, especially with Nordic Ridge and some of the areas we develop, there are a lot of drivers. We have 2 vehicles at some units, and it gives us some additional off-street parking for our tenants and guests. So this exception would allow that. If that was not allowed, we would still meet the city requirement, but we would be very tight on parking in our opinion. So in addition, it also gives us the opportunity to add some larger patios and outdoor common spaces for the tenants to use for grilling and gathering areas. So we are asking for an exception 3% higher than what is allowed in the original GDP of 50%. So that's kind of the first line item. The second one is the max building height. It was allowed at 40 feet in the previous GDP. I can tell you from experience when we did Nordic Ridge, that's becomes pretty difficult with some of the things we like to add into these developments, which include 9-foot ceilings. And we actually in the Nordic Ridge project had to reduce our floor trusses down to 18-inch floor trusses. And it became quite a challenge for some of the trades to fit within that area. So giving it a little more height gives us the opportunity to do 24-inch floor trusses, gives us that 9-foot ceiling for the tenants. So it's much more open feeling for the units. And also it really increases the curb appeal. We're excited to show you guys, we have some today, but I don't know if there'll be time, some of the elevations and the way they're working. And we really want our project to stand out. We wanted to have a good curb appeal from the exterior, and with our architect even playing with the Norwegian heritage, some steep pitches on some of those roofs help do that. So that's our reasoning behind asking for that second exception of 5 additional feet. To be honest with you, I've talked to Tammy quite a bit from JLA, and most likely it's going to need to be around 3 feet higher, but giving us that 5-foot buffer gives us some room. And our thought behind that too is we're not in a residential neighborhood. Hopefully it's not towering above anything around it by any means, and it would fit in well. The next exception that we are asking for, we're trying to get our signage done earlier, get all the approvals so we don't have to go back. On the last project we did in Stoughton, we had to go back through and get some signage approval. So we have a small variance on the size of the sign. We'd like to do a monument sign when you're entering the development. Being a 5-acre development, we'd like that sign to be just a little bit larger than what's allowed by the zoning restrictions. So, and then the last item that I have on my list is the lighting. If you look through the notes from Mike Stacy, this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse, so Tammy, jump in if I say something wrong. Go ahead.
You want me just to
go
take
ahead,
this
jump
one?
in this part. You were the one that explained it to me today, so go for it.
When we had been working through our earlier SIP submittal, which we had submitted, and then that's when we realized the issues with the zoning and the sequence of approvals. But we did have a photometric plan there that as we were working through it, we started noticing that at the driveways, at the entrances onto the property, we are slightly above the 0.5 foot candles that were limited at the property boundary. We're pretty much there everywhere else except at those driveways. And because we do have pedestrians that would potentially be crossing the driveways, and also I believe our latest landscape site plan shows a sidewalk coming around and crossing an entrance into a garage of that front building. We were concerned about pedestrian safety. We can begin to kind of modify and if, I don't know, Mike, am I able to share my screen at all? Or Rodney?
I think if Rodney stops sharing, you'll be able to share possibly.
Okay. All right, I am going to share my screen. Host has disabled participant sharing.
Yeah, the host has to go to security and click on the.
Okay, that's, we're basically really, really close. If we need to start adjusting proposed light pole locations, we can start to do that. But it was just right where we have a convergence of pedestrian and vehicular traffic that we were kind of concerned about. And right now at the northernmost entrance, we're pretty much at 0.7 foot candles. And at the southern driveway entrance, we are at 0.6. So we're really not that much above. What I did include in the GDP was the range per best practices for a couple of different, excuse me, a couple of different, organizations that deal in lighting. So I figured they're the experts.
Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong here too. Is this lighting closest to the public park? There's no housing or
correct.
Okay.
And not knowing where the street, you know, the lighting on the street will end up. I'd have to go back to the original proposal, the GDP for the whole development, to see exactly where those end up. And that could make a play on it. And maybe we would be able to move some of our proposed site lighting to adjust.
With that said, unless we're stating something, and please correct me, Michael or Rodney, the rest of what we've asked for was already, I'll call it preliminary approved because it hasn't been recorded, but was the same as what Bob Dvorak had approved in his GDP. So that is a recap on what I understand and what the differences are.
Yep.
Yeah, our ordinance that I have on the screen actually lists all of them, but you enumerated the ones that were different than the previous one. This list includes all of the exceptions, if you will, that would be identified for this project.
Mm-hmm.
All right, were there any questions about anything that the team just went through?
Mayor, this is Todd. Got just a couple questions. One would be exactly how many parking stalls did you add? You said that you were able to add some additional parking stalls if you went up 3%. I'm just kind of curious as to how many stalls that is.
Tammy, I was trying to look that up today. I thought it was 12 to 18. Do you have a figure on that? And
Yeah, I do. Hang on, just give me a second to find the right page. We have 94 regular parking stalls and 6 accessible stalls. So that's 100 total for the surface lot.
Okay.
Right. I think his question was more based on if we were to fall under the 50% impervious, what would we lose? Is that, am I?
Okay.
That's exactly what I was asking. Yes.
Okay. Go back. I think I'll find it. Go on to the next question.
Ryan Quam was kind of taking that non-curbed area off. So I guess we could count those as we're going through.
Yeah. So the 11 at the southern entrance, I think is what he was looking at, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 11 there. There's a potential for another 6 or 8. There's another curve on the south end before we enter the drive to exit. I think those were looked at as possible ones to lose.
Okay.
I can tell you where we are as far as what's required.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're looking at 100 and I think if I remember right, 160 units total on lot 18 here.
Mm-hmm.
And you had 100 surface parking stalls. Are there stalls underneath the buildings as well?
Yes. Okay. We have for the corner building, excuse me, the C building, there are 72 underground spaces there. And the A and the B building share a parking level below. And they have a total of 76 between them.
Okay.
All right, so then my other question relates to the increased lighting at the entrances to the 2 parking lots, or the 2 entrances to the lot. And I guess I would, 2-part question. One is for our city staff on whether or not this has ever come up before where developments have either needed or requested heavier light lumens at those entrances, which to me makes some sense. I mean, because not all boundaries, when we talk about the light leaving the property, light leaving at a parking lot entrance or exit or a driveway is a little bit different than leaving like a side yard or something along those lines. But I'm also kind of curious as developers, if you've ever run across other communities that you worked with in Dane County or around Madison that actually modify their ordinance to allow for higher light intensity at those locations.
As far as the city experience, I don't think we've any specific requests for such consideration as part of a GDP or an SIP.
And as far as the developer goes, we have not had the need to request that as well. I'm going to lean towards Tammy on their recommendation as the architect, saying this is something that they brought to us, and we're just going off their experience to. And again, I think, Tammy, at this point, it's not 100% sure that you know exactly where it's going to be, but it gives you some, leniency.
That's just it. You know, we're still refining the site location, you know, where everything is at. This is just something that we noticed as we were reviewing again and preparing for the GDP. As we looked at our photometrics, I noticed that they were just slightly higher at the driveway entrances. So I went and did a little research and, you know, the Illuminating Engineering Society had some recommendations for different kinds of developments. And so those are the ranges that I entered on the in the GDP. Obviously, the foot candles at the building, you know, it's something that wasn't regulated by your zoning ordinance. It's more at the property line. I included both though.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions from commissioners? I think we still have a need for a public hearing on this one.
I had one quick question.
Sure, go ahead, Commissioner Farrell.
This more for city staff. Has the fire department reviewed this? I assume there may be a revised process now where they're chopping on all such things.
Fire department has been involved. They're excited to actually see the roadway along the north be part of that to provide better access to the north side of the corner building, if you will. So that was one of their principal concerns. Hydrant spacing is something for the on-site hydrant spacing in the point of connection. I think they've been involved with that as well.
Okay, very good. One more quick question for the engineering firm, and I asked this about the riverfront project. Do you know, have you incorporated crime prevention through environmental design principles in your effort?
I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question? Have
you incorporated crime prevention through environmental design?
Not at this point, but with something that we kind of we just kind of are aware of when we're laying things out, and that's why the lighting was brought up. And also, you know, we'll want to make sure that for those units that are at ground level, that they have, you know, lighting that allows, you know, some better security at their patios. So, you know, as we're working through our SIP submittal, which we hope to submit at the end of March, we can definitely take a look into some of those a little more closely. Definitely your parking lots, you want to be careful and not have little hidey holes where people can hide and jump out on folks and stuff. So,
and entrances, you want to avoid any potential entrapment areas near entrances.
Yep. Yeah. I was a campus planner for UW Whitewater for 8 years, and this was a very big topic. So,
great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, we do have a need for a public hearing, so I'll close the regular meeting and reopen for the public hearing. Anybody wish to speak? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, reopen for our regular business. Any additional questions come up during that long public hearing? Guess not. At this point, I would entertain a motion, a recommendation for council.
I'll make that motion to accept the proposed changes in the ordinance to the council.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I'll add one comment that I think it would be good for the city to kind of, if this moves forward and the lumens are a little bit brighter at those entranceways, that we kind of use this as a test case to see if it's actually beneficial or helps, and we might want to look at that as being something that we consider for other development down the road.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I was kind of wondering the same thing as far as our ordinances on the heights and those types of things that, you know, we might want to kind of review that and see if this is a one-off or if this is going to be kind of the new normal as we're looking at future developments. You know, I assume that's something that, you know, Rodney and Michael, you guys would probably just do.
I would caution when we start playing with the rooms for lighting. You know, we're trying to do dark skies as much as possible, slippery slope. You can, you know, with this test case, as you like to call it. I'm not necessarily in favor of higher lighting than what the ordinance already calls for.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't necessarily saying that I was in favor either. I just feel that if we are going to allow it this time, that we should watch it so that we can kind of see what kind of impact it has.
I'm telling you the truth, I'm not comfortable allowing it at this time even. I understand the height difference, you know, if we're trying to do an architectural effect, that's a little more understandable, but the light lumens, not necessarily, no. We have enough lighting problems the way it is still in this community. I don't want to start adding to it.
All right. Any other thoughts or questions? So I believe we had a motion in a second. And all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed?
No.
Okay, thank you. That motion does carry.
How's everything going?
And that takes us to item number 10, which is site plan amendment for the dumpster enclosure at Dollar Tree at 1008 Nygard. I know there's a little history on this. It looks like they're trying to rectify it here. So who wants to walk us through it?
Yeah, we've had a non-compliant installation at this facility that we've been pursuing. The applicant and the owner have submitted a request to modify the construction to be more consistent with the ordinance. You'll see the existing, this is the existing facility that's there now. You can see it's not an enclosure that meets the standards. They are now proposing to use an enclosure that uses the LP siding to match the existing building.
How's the driver's head coming?
Todd, are you on the line? Is there, Todd Nelson? Is there something you'd like to add?
Todd Nelson's here.
Yeah, is there anything you'd like to add, Todd, about your proposed changes?
Not that what's already been submitted.
All right. Any initial questions or comments from commissioners?
Does with this proposed change to the dumpster enclosure, does that is that all of the non-conformances for that property, or are there others still out there?
There's some other ones still lingering. We've got some landscaping. We've got some stormwater management items that obviously not seasonally able to correct at this point, but they've put in in place a plan to address at least the stormwater things in the spring. So we anticipate compliance soon for those.
Okay, so one step at a time.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion for the site plan amendment.
I'll make that motion to approve the new site plan amendment to the dumpster area.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Schumacher. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Next couple items, what we're doing here is to introduce some concept plans. And these we've done some internal review before we got to this point. So the first one is the Stone Crest subdivision. Director Scheel, you want to start this one?
Yeah, I will. Certainly. The owner and their team of consultants are on board as well tonight. This actually is the subdivision of Stonecrest. Just to give some orientation, Highway 51 is on the north edge of this proposed development overall concept plan, and it extends all the way to the southern edge of County A. You'll note on the bottom left-hand side of the page here is actually where our public works facility is along County A. The triangle that's listed as phase 3 actually would be the phase 3 of the Stonecrest subdivision that's just to the north of it and shown on the map as well. Phase 3 is the area that I think they first intend to develop as part of this overall plan. I think they'll get into more detail, but part of looking at their entire property is to allow them to go through an urban service area amendment and for the community to really evaluate the site more comprehensively. As I understand it, there's a number of development phases envisioned for this subdivision area, with phase 3 being the first area that they'd proposed to move forward with development. Tonight's meeting is really just to take some initial feedback from the commissioners. Internally, as the mayor mentioned, we've had some staff iterations of discussions with the team, but certainly they're hearing comments from staff and incorporating them in the concepts. And now it's appropriate to get some initial feedback from the commissioners. Steve Tremlett from MSA, John and Tom Mattson are on the line, as well as others that might be a party to the discussion. I didn't know how you wanted to handle it, gentlemen. Did you, Steve, want to take it from here or otherwise?
Yep. I can start in and the Mattsons can jump in when they have something to add. Good intro. Thank you, Rodney. Basically, initially, I want to talk about the overall concept for the entire development. Again, phases 1 and 2 have been completed. So when I looked at this, I wanted to think about the road network, the land uses, where the park is, how big it is. Part of this is extending Stonecrest Road, which is the northern street in Stonecrest phase 1 and 2, as well as Autumn Crest, which is the southern road, making connection to the north for Vernon from the town into the development. And then all the way down Fall Haven, which there was a stubbed road to the south, and extending that through the development. And that connects into what is a north-south collector that connects County A up to 51 through what is a commercial loop street. So when we looked at how to connect to 51, understanding that there is steep slopes and viewing issues potentially through that section, that ideally this looped from Spring on the west over to the neighboring property in future connection made sense to allow for those connections. So the plan again is to have this north-south connection through the development with additional streets, internal streets network based on the uses. I will also note that we provided information to parks and they had feedback. I had 2 parks, but we kind of localized it to one central park. And if you don't know this area, this was a quarry. That park as shown is one of the sections that were dug out. There is a pipeline right where where the mouse is now, that runs through this entire property and to the west, all the way to the street to the west on County A. And then it's dug out again as you go south from there, from that pipeline. So part of this was you have Racetrack Park that has a lot of great amenities there and planned future additions. So the idea of this park is to utilize, there is woodlands on here, there is quite a bit of terrain change. And so creating a trail network and, sled hill or other activities, but yet there's still a flat zone along Autumn Crest. So that kind of gives it a different feature. Then you also notice the black dash lines are primary trail networks. I wanted to show that there's one north-south what you show in the east-west, sorry. Right. Okay, north-south from proposed C all the way down, and it keeps going south and wiggles to the west and hits County A. So it's a full north-south all the way through. There's an existing connection right to that point going west to racetrack that goes east-west. And so you come south a little bit, and then on that pipeline connection, you go east, and it has a connection to continue it further east. And then there's the white dashes, which shows several locations that are what is considered connector trails. There is a couple segments that do touch roadways, but in general, all the stars showing all the different connection points that gets you through that trail network, with the assumption that you can continue these in both directions, north, south, east, west. Overall uses, you can see heavier use to the north with commercial along 51, potentially the purple on the south side of that road C could be mixed use or more intensive apartments. Then there's some duplex, which is the lighter orange on proposed road D and a little bit on the collector. And then it runs into single family in the central section. And then as you keep going south in the collector, it turns back into more medium to higher density residential as you go south. There's a couple I call eyebrows in the center there. That is a discussion that we've had. It provides a unique case where they have a green in front of them and the driveways are off the main road. Again, this is all at conceptual level. Overall, this is about getting the density of the development, number of units, where stormwater will be handled and where we're connecting to the major roads nearby. So that could still be a discussion down the road, but it still gets to the number of units overall. So in the southwest corner is the triangle that we're talking about, phase 3. I can go more in detail with that. Rodney, I was thinking if we can get initial reaction to the overall concept, then maybe we can focus then on phase 3 a little further. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yep.
So I guess I'm opening up to any comments or questions to kind of, the intent again is to ultimately work on stormwater further once we get more approval of the overall look here and find if we have enough stormwater being handled and work towards an urban service area amendment working with the city.
All right, thank you for that. We'll just go around the table. Start with Alderperson Caravello. Do you have any initial thoughts?
Well, just immediately my first thought is in referring to, I think what you referred to as the eyebrows, if it's what, yeah, that piece and then that piece down there. Wondering about just looking to the future as far as emergency vehicle access, snow removal, that sort of thing, if those, how well those work, just how well those work.
Sure, and I think in talking to Rodney, there's maybe one case within the city, possibly two. I know of several others that are in the east side of Madison. I lived in a neighborhood that had those. I am showing a 60-foot right of way through those. But first, I guess I'll open to Rodney if you have any comments about the existing ones.
Yeah, certainly. Just even looking at how these are designed, you've hit the highlights, Mr. Caravello. We got to deal with emergency access and garbage trucks and how those can maneuver. The sharper point on this particular one off of Autumn Crest, really have to take a look at that. Along those lines, maybe I can just share a couple of the staff comments. In emergency services have raised at least that question. So as that design gets refined, they want to have input and evaluate that to make sure that's done safely for their equipment. Secondly, one of the things that we've talked about in the past is understanding what the street cross sections look like: parking, no parking, pavement widths, terrace widths, sidewalks, trails. So as part of the preliminary planning process, those things start to emerge more, but certainly making the commissioners aware of at least that part of staff comments that we're looking at with them as well.
All right. Any other thoughts, Alderperson Caravello?
Yep. I like that it's one large cohesive park that is open all the way along the strip there on what looks like Autumn Crest and that proposed Road A. So it's, I think that would make it very inviting to have it just open like that instead of, you know, kind of closed off or not as easily accessible. Parks wise, I'm kind of curious looking at this map and just sort of going back to what's indicated as the phases 1 and 2 piece, if there's any, if anybody recalls historically, if there's any park dedication component from that piece that was not dedicated or anything, because that, you know, not having been around at that time, I'm wondering if there's any sort of parkland or piece of park that kind of should have gone along with the phases 1 and 2.
Yeah, there's a small segment and they've incorporated that. It's my understanding they've incorporated that acreage into the dedication that's proposed as part of the overall concept here. But certainly there was a small, I'll call it deficiency back in the early 2000s that was planned to be incorporated in a future phase. And we're certainly keeping track of that as well.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise I think the trail connections look pretty good at this point. I know that A is not a very bicycle friendly road at this point, but who knows what the future will bring with regards to that. But yeah, otherwise I think that's everything I have at this point.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Farrell, you want to go next?
I think you're muted, Al.
Sorry, I was trying to temporarily unmute. That didn't work. Can somebody remind what's the speed limit on County A down there?
I think it transitions to 55 in this corridor, in this segment.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just trying to refresh my memory because that's right near the entrance to the Yardway site, correct?
Yeah, right at this point in the center part of the screen is where Collins Road branches off.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, and these trails, they're general purpose, pedestrian, yes. Bicycle. Is that the intention?
Correct.
Okay. No, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
All right. Alderperson Caravello, you want to go next? Or not Caravello, Majewski, would you like to go next?
You know, overall, it's all right. I would like to have seen the park being separated from the private lots by a public right of way. So there was a demarcation between them. The trail going north-south along the very edge is kind of disappointing. I'd like to have seen that in the center where more people could access it, who were instead of having to go all the way across from one end of this development to the other to get to it. All the recreation is heavy on one end and it's not dispersed throughout. Otherwise, it is what it is until I see more.
Okay. Yeah, we did have a conversation because the initial reaction that Director Glenn and I had was the same one on that north-south. And then as we talked about it more, it's kind of serving what's already been developed and the future development. So it kind of grew on us a little bit, but certainly totally understand your comments on that one. Let's see, how about Commissioner Barman?
I agree with a lot of the comments that come up to this point. I guess I'll focus on the proposed commercial up closer on the north end of the development. I'm not sure at this point that I'm comfortable with extending commercial that far to the east outside Stoughton. I think there's more of a need for residential in this area than there is to have more commercial on that stretch of 151. So I guess, or an extension of Main Street there. So I would really want to think more on that.
And then I guess, Rodney, what would it say in our comp plan for that?
I think we're envisioning for a mixed use along there. Certainly the east side is truly probably clamoring for additional commercial. And if it's supported by the additional rooftops out here, I think you'd probably have some ancillary businesses that would really benefit from this development, as well as the existing development on the east side that really lacks a lot of commercial activity there.
Okay. Yeah, and I suppose that's something that, so we go through the zoning process, and if there was no interest, could we change that later? Or would we have to change the comp plan to accommodate that?
We're really not even at the point where we're looking at consistency with comp plans, but yes, we haven't, this is not a rezoning. This is really just trying to look at anticipated future land uses and the subdivision layout in concept. I don't even think it would require a comprehensive plan amendment, Mayor. I believe it's got enough flexibility along that area to allow for multiple different types of uses right along 51 there.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Barman?
Not at this time.
All right. Alderperson Schumacher.
My main concern on the development as a whole would be pretty much at the entrance and exit points to the entire development in there. I guess of particular concern is that section at County A, East Academy and Racetrack Road. When you're trying to navigate through that stop sign there, and especially when you're looking at oncoming traffic from the east, with that bend in the road there, especially in the summertime when everything is kind of grown up around there, the visibility is really poor at that intersection. So adding additional traffic from a development is only really going to pour more onto that intersection, which is already dicey at best, and especially at night too, when it's fairly dark in that section. Same goes for the additions onto 51 that are proposed. In order to get out of Racetrack Road and back onto 51, that one's always a challenge, because I think a lot of people consider that they can hit the highway speed right from there. So that one's always a difficult intersection to get out of. So adding more plus lots of additional traffic, I think is going to cause a lot of accidents potentially along 51. Thoughts about that? Is there other engineering in that we could do at those entrance and exit points in there to alleviate this a bit?
Yeah, most certainly. Traffic connections there. What type of design that connection entails? Are there dedicated turn lanes, deceleration lanes, or acceleration lanes that might be necessary to get onto or off of 51, and likewise in and out of the development? Those things really would have to be refined going forward. There's no question. Your point about the concern along the County A connection nearest Academy or nearest Racetrack Road. I think you'll talk a little more about that as part of the phase 3 discussion we'll have in a moment. But certainly those are things that we've raised at a staff level for consideration as well.
Okay, thanks. Those are my main concerns in there.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Robinson, did you have something?
No, I don't. I think everything's been pretty covered.
That's the advantage of going last. Next time you're going first.
Maybe I can just highlight a couple more. I didn't let the commissioners off that easily. You let them, give their opinions now, but I'll just highlight a couple of additional staff comments that we had talked about. Emergency response to the facility and how this ultimately phases is going to be important to both for utilities and transportation purposes. Our police department has raised a concern, or at least a question about how the phasing will impact their response times to certain things. So learning about how this overall will potentially be completed and developed over time, I think is important for them to understand, as well as us. I mentioned the connection and what the corridor of A looks like going forward. Having a bike trail and or pedestrian route that connects to County A, understand the trail network, but understanding what happens once they get to A is something we'll have to look at going forward as well. So those are things I think were worth highlighting again, if we hadn't already mentioned those. And for the commissioners, those are additional things we talked about. Understanding the stormwater management plan, obviously they've identified it at a high level where the anticipated basins are. Additional design work would need to be gone through, as we all know, but that will help put together their urban service area application for the overall land that's shown here for long-term development.
Yes, thanks for the overview, and commissioners for your comments. We definitely, talking to Rodney, made sense to come before you early here to get some reaction before we get too far in engineering, and definitely some things have to be worked out in phasing, and that will be our next steps. Even considering talking to DOT through their new setup to talk about developments, that would be something we would want to consider doing as well at some point.
As well as the county along A for that, that area too. Yep. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Steve.
No problem. So then if we go to do you have the other image potentially? Yep. So just focusing a little bit more on what is planned to be the next phase. So we're going to be doing the urban service area amendment for the entire area. But as we get beyond that step, looking to plat and look towards developing this portion, roughly 8 acres, just south of what has been developed. So making that further extension of Fall Haven to the edge of this triangle piece that provides access to 2 single family lots that are roughly about 12,000 square feet. And then lot 2 to the south of there being a side-by-side condo development of 8 buildings. Potentially we're looking at planned development here to allow for some shorter rear setbacks and closer buildings than what is conventional. We can talk about how we could, screen better along the edges, landscaping or otherwise, to allow for that potential request and reduction. And then lot 1, which is to the west, is looking potentially at 1 building, kind of using the hillside there. There's quite a bit of 15, 20 feet change where you could get underground parking, and that's exposed in the lower portion, but not in the upper portion, meaning closer to the existing development. It may only be 2 stories and maybe 3 stories as you go south. But again, this is something that will work out in planned development through GDP. But the main reason to do that for that lot is, we're proposing potentially up to 42 units, which is roughly 20 units per acre. Conventional zoning only allows up to 12 units per building. Otherwise, it needs to be conditional use. So the intention is to sell off this land. So to get by right, the number that seems to make sense is something they're considering. Then you'll see the driveway is still up in the air of discussions of, can we make a safe connection to County A? And that'll have to be looked at. Or alternatively, it would connect back to Fall Haven through wetlands that would have to be filled. And obviously that puts 3 sort of driveway streets around that potential existing lot in the current development. So there is some benefit to see if County A is the better connection, if we can make it a safe connection, so that you're not, 1, filling wetlands, 2, you're not creating a lot that has 3-sided streets per se. But we got to make it safe, and that has to be reviewed further. So that's kind of the rundown of this next phase. And since that is something we're looking to go beyond just the urban service area, I was wondering if there's any additional comments that could be made at this time related to this specific phase.
Maybe I can start by just giving you a couple of additional staff comments. That, again, we had internal conversations. Temporary cul-de-sac, the even off-site here, potentially a paved bulb, if you will, potentially, depending on when Fall Haven would be extended further to the east. The pavement width and turnaround radius of this private, even though it's private, access for garbage equipment and trying to prevent them from having to back in and out of that facility. And of utmost concern is the A corridor safety, both access and pedestrian trail considerations along there. Again, understanding the overall potential development timing for Fall Haven going to the east and maybe a further connection to A, if that's part of one of the next phases, that might be beneficial to address some of the transportation loading.
Thank you, Ronnie.
I think there was also some discussion about that northern trail, if I recall, Rodney.
The trail here.
Yeah, about trying to see what we could do to extend that out and what that width is expected to be at this point.
Yeah, certainly it was this phase, but I think there was also some discussion more about this multifamily location here and extending it through. But yes, definitely looking at the trail and when and how that might be connected, logical timing for that. I.e. that phase might be appropriate to expand slightly to the east if you're kind of reading between the lines, maybe to accommodate the bulb, maybe to accommodate the additional parkland dedication, acquiring that as part of a dedication as part of phase 3. So anticipating development along Autumn Crest, but might have some deeding of the property occurring as part of the next phase.
All right. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
What would become of that X lot on the northern edge of that triangle, that little bump out?
So currently it's temporary stormwater. There is, I believe, valves. It's already been set up to be shut off and handled in this phase 3. So the intent, it's already been approved for a single family lot. And as long as we can handle the stormwater that already is designed to Fall Haven Street currently in those ponding areas.
Okay, thanks. And my other comment would be, I would be strong. I mean, even though I just talked about that little curve on County A as being difficult to navigate that and having a driveway outlet there, I would honestly prefer to have that, and I would be very hesitant to support anything that would require filling of wetlands.
Steve, can you tell them the type of wetlands that are present there, and that is actually an unnatural wetland caused by the culvert? You know, we've had this researched, and could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so it isn't waters that would go to federal rivers, and so it's already been allowed for federal exemption to fill if it were the case. In the northern half is not quality. None of this is really quality wetlands. The northern half definitely is drier. Most times you can see where the wet portion is. But notably, it's been delineated at this time as wetland.
Okay, that would have been handy to know that ahead. But now that I know what as it's defined, that makes it different.
Okay.
All right. Anything else, Alderperson Schumacher?
Nope, that was all.
All right. Any other commissioners have any thoughts on this section? Okay. So you'd be looking at potentially starting here first. I think that's the overall idea. Any idea of a range on when we would expect the next one in the phasing process?
I'll defer to Tom or John.
We really haven't discussed timing yet, Mayor. You know, we would expect the condominium project to go very well, and at this point in time, I guess we hadn't discussed phase 2, but are most interested in getting phase 3 started.
So you'll be looking at doing this phase 3 this year yet?
We'd like to. We'd like to begin as soon as possible.
And the other phases would just be sometime after next.
Yeah, would follow closely behind.
Okay.
And ultimately, if you look at what we're going to do on the next phases too, the next one probably closest to A might be a logical one to do, and then on the west side of the northern ones, I use the airport and I want to keep that open as many years as I can. So.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think, that question comes in when we're talking about the park, when we can anticipate that being usable.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and the park, the usability of the park, I mean, wouldn't have to wait for the later phases. We could look at that. We can
deed that to
probably work that park in, fairly earlier on in the, we'll call it phase 4 and 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the commissioners? Otherwise, thank you for the concept and the presentation. It gives us something to think about. And I think they're going to be talking about this at Park and Rec tomorrow night. Is that correct, Phil?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So we'll see you again soon.
All right. Looking forward to it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. And the next concept plan is coming from Eldon Homes and what we refer to as the Tigen Farm. I don't know if that's still the official name of it, but that's what we tend to call it. And who's going to go through this one?
I think you're going to still see Steve from MSA give an overview. I was just going to give a kind of a general overview. Acker Road runs along the south side of the property, South 4th Street on the east side of the property, and it connects with Page Street extended from Isham Street. The reason I just wanted to introduce it, this particular tract of land, unlike the last one, this one's not yet in the city limits. It's in our comprehensive plan, certainly to be annexed to the city and become part of the city, but this piece of land has not yet been annexed to the city. So kind of with that backdrop, I'd turn it over and let others go into more detail.
So this is the land that Rob Hochhauser owns, and he's working with Eldon Homes. And Steve, you might as well just move to Stoughton.
I'm helping you grow. So I appreciate the introduction. If you don't know, I'm sure you're aware of Isham. Rob is already planning to extend it to the west with 6 duplex lots and a stormwater outlot to the far west. We're also going to be looking at how we may be looking at combining the stormwater facilities there. Haven't done so yet. And then in general, we're looking at about 32 acres here, all the way from Acker all the way up to Isham. There is quite a bit of woodlands and wetland in the northeast portion along 4th Street. So part of this for the park dedication was let's not disturb the existing woodlands and that major wetland, and let's use it as an amenity for the neighborhood. You'll see 3 streets following the edges of that, which includes 4th Street, which is still in the town. So I guess I'll jump to that. We intend to put in a petition for annexation in the next week or two. So we'll get that process started. But yeah, 4th Street is currently in the town, same with Acker. So we'll be looking at potential urbanizing a portion of 4th Street. And on Acker, doing similar to Norwick Ridge, which is doing a bypass lane to allow for that in a right turn in, and using Page Street, extending it south all the way to Acker, making it wider along the entry there from Acker with a boulevard, and then that shrinks up to the 66-foot right of way, which is what is to the north. You'll see orange and yellow. So the yellow are currently to be single family. There's little pockets of duplex. A good balanced neighborhood does include a mix of unit types. I intend to always look at what does one side look onto the other side, meaning typically I like to face duplex with duplex and single family with single family, unless it's on a corner condition where you could potentially have facing one street and the other. So we're still kind of looking through that. Obviously, there is a existing home in the southwest quadrant. We haven't had any conversations yet, but that's something to be looked at. Initial concepts included the access to the west further south, basically in line with the building. And conversations with staff, we moved that Future Road B north of there. And you can see that ties into Future Road D to the east and to 4th Street. So there's 3 ways in and out of here. We're looking at affordable product here, meaning there might be even some consideration of no basements and getting at the lower price range. There is one thing we're considering in this redesign, because initially we had page straight south, but we found out that a lift station potentially would have been needed to allow for service of the lower portions. You can kind of see that black outline in the middle where the pointer is. It's really low there. So we're actually going to be using fill from Nordic Ridge and to fill this land to allow for gravity service. And so actually the lots that on Future Road D, they'll have nice rear exposure, basement exposure along there towards Acker. But in general, we're looking at smaller lot sizes and potentially of no basements in some cases. Where your pointer is right now is a little eyebrow. Could be right now 3 duplex. Possibly we can look at that being single family. That was a discussion item with Rodney. That's basically the gist. It's small. It's affordable housing, fitting the existing park to work with the trail system that you can see there along 4th that will connect to the west through a corridor behind Isham. And so again, we're looking for comments. This area is needing an urban service area amendment as well. So we wanted to get this in front of you, but this also is one we're looking to get subdivided and moving towards development this year.
All right, thank you. I guess we can go around the table again. And as promised, Commissioner Robinson, did you want to go first on this one?
I'm good.
You're good? All right. Let's go with Alderperson Majewski then.
All right. Looking at the trail system, it looks good along the north edge. However, I would like to see that trail system also go so that it meets out at Acker Road somewhere. So we can continue that trail in the future going south. The wetland, as I see from your note, that it's 5.05 acres, and 4.7 of it is dedicated parkland. And I'm assuming the rest of that, the balance is the wetland that is surrounding it. The dedicated parkland is surrounding the wetland.
It is excluding the wetland, but the 4.7 acres includes the trail corridor as well.
It does. Okay. So I got for now.
All right.
Oh, one other thing, the node on the bottom, you have in the southeast corner, Future D, you have an island there. Who gets that? Who maintains that?
That is a discussion point. As right now, it's shown as part of right-of-way because it isn't very large.
Yeah, I see it as a maintenance problem. I see it as, it's for a park system to take care of it. It's a standalone by itself. Time to travel to get to it, maintain it. I'm looking at one here now. The last development we just looked at had several of them. Kettle West has several of them, or had several of them, and they add up after a while, and it can become it can be taxing to the Public Works Department and to the Parks Department trying to maintain those. So it's a nice feature, but I don't know if it's reasonable.
Could I ask a question? Is that
sure? Yeah.
Original versions of these eyebrows have been all concrete or asphalt, I mean, all paved. And this has kind of been an iteration of being more attractive. And, you know, it works to do it all as paved, but I don't know if that's a preferred direction. You know, part of the reason why these are in here is to allow for, you know, a residential unit or lot because it's the depth that happens on corners like that. But again, it also takes some driveways off that, and it is amenity and increases the sale prices of those homes that are adjacent to it. But I understand your statement, so that's why I just wanted to ask: would it be something you'd want to rather see it as all paved, or is it the whole concept in general, or openness to it if it weren't if there wasn't an agreement for the neighboring properties to manage it? So it was kind of multiple questions, I guess.
Well, aesthetically, I like them. I prefer them. It's just the, you know, if it's a neighborhood association that takes care of them, then I have no problem with it. But if it comes back to the city to have to maintain them, it becomes a problem. And as far as more asphalt, no, I can't see that. And then it's a parking lot.
All right, well, I think that's good feedback. So thank you for that. Did you have anything else, Tom?
No, thank you.
Okay. How about Commissioner Barman?
In general, I want to give you some positive feedback, and that I really like the overall layout. Considering the space and the surrounding uses and where the wetland and the initial or the existing more wooded areas are, I think this is a good use of the site and the flow of the streets and the layouts of the lot. So in general, I like the feel of it.
All right. Alderperson Schumacher.
I have one question and then one comment. The question on that larger stormwater management pond in there, the land that's directly to the south of that's not owned by, I guess it's that tan looking, I guess it'd be the edge of that farm field there, a little further down, Rodney, in that area. Yep. That's not owned by the developer or person wanting to develop this property. Is that true? And
That's
who
true.
owns that?
This is a different owner.
Okay. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was somehow connected to that substation there in the corner or not.
So the substation, if I can just elaborate, the substation obviously is owned by the utilities. The home to the north of the substation, this one is the one that actually owns the land. It's been added to this parcel. You might recall this was part of a CSM. So this larger tract, and then there's another separate property owned by a different property owner for this house.
Okay, thanks. Then to my comment, going along with adding, I mean, I like that there are a good number of entrances and exits within this entire development, and I think that will manage a lot more of the traffic very well. So I guess it all comes back to our existing streets in there, and that bit at Isham and 4th Street there, as we're going to add a bunch of housing units in this area, just to make sure that vision triangle within that intersection gets addressed. I mean, I know the speed limit is 35 there, I think only.
Should be 25 right at Isham.
Okay. That would be good to maintain that for sure. And then any thoughts about lowering that speed limit along 4th Street then, or in that section, continue the 25? Because I know it jumps up there at one point.
Yeah, certainly right now, this stretch of 4th Street or Taylor Lane is not under the city's jurisdiction.
Right.
I think we'd have the opportunity to look at probably modifying the speed limit to 25 in the city's section once it becomes part of the city.
Sure, that would be, again, those would be my only concerns, would be in the ingress, egress into the development, and paying close attention to the vision triangles at those intersections. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Farrell?
No comments on the concept plan. I think it looks fine.
All right, thank you. Alderperson Caravello.
Yeah, thanks. I agree, or the comment that Commissioner Alder Majewski made about the north-south connectivity of the trail, especially with that leg coming down at the end of Isham. Would be nice to see some way, somehow, to have that extend down to Acre. But I see that there's, you know, kind of, I guess, a roadblock there with the property that is the house that is already there, and then there's a driveway just over. So if that could be just something kept in mind for the future, I think that would be nice, because I know we've also got some mind to have that trail continue off to the west as well when there is development at that point. And just to throw this out there, because I like big, huge parks that just have lots of accessibility and are very inviting. So for me, I think it would be fabulous if I had an eraser at the where Page Street and Future Road B is, if those 5 lots that are right there were part of the park, would be fabulous. But I know that enough development has to be available to make enough lots have to be available to make a development happen. But in a perfect world, that would be like a giant, lovely, wonderful park. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Were there any additional staff comments, Rodney?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The eyebrow that was started, that we discussed earlier, again, that was kind of an emergency response serviceability question. So understanding how equipment larger can get through and around there, namely garbage trucks and emergency vehicles. There was some discussion about the single family lots that abut Acker, maybe considering those as duplex facilities and relocating some of the other planned areas for duplexes along the Acker Road area. Don't know that we have any strong opinions about it, but there was some discussion about whether that might be a more suitable land use backing up against Acker as opposed to single family homes. So that was one thing. The trail corridor north-south, at a minimum, I think this was kind of broached, but there needs to be some type of trail connection that extends from Isham down and through, and at least to Future Road A, even if it's a pedestrian sidewalk of some sort. You'll recognize there's a fair distance between Page and the end of Isham. We really need to have a pedestrian connection that would allow for that connectivity between the two streets. So those are some of the initial comments that, well, not just initial, as the commissioners might be aware of, we've been able to provide some initial feedback throughout the development of this process. Understanding what the 4th Street corridor looks like going forward is certainly something we all have to contemplate. There's a culvert / bridge or water that does get under 4th Street in this real rural section, connecting pedestrians from the Isham Page Street area in the future, what that looks like, even for the city as we look forward. What does the South Street or South 4th Street corridor look like? We might have a desire to create a better pedestrian. There is no pedestrian sidewalk or any walkway along the west side of 4th Street in this segment. When that street gets redesigned, there might be an opportunity to design the pavement width narrower and create a off-road, if you will, shared use path that's above the curb. So having a street width that's narrower, but having the shared use path be above the curb. For those that I'm sure you're all aware of, it's been highlighted, there's a very steep terrain at this western edge that would have to be incorporated. But understanding how pedestrians can get safely to this large amenity and how the residents of this area can also utilize 4th Street to get to the downtown district, I think is going to be important to contemplate.
All right, thank you. Did that spur any more questions or comments from commissioners? All right, anything else Steve or Robbie need from us tonight?
Rob, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I don't. I appreciate everyone's time looking this over and all the work we did ahead of time. I think we got a great concept that we're going to bring forward and a great product that we're going to add to the city. So thank you all for your time and consideration in this.
All right, thank you. That takes us to future agenda items. Is there anything from commissioners? And I imagine Michael's probably working on a few things.
Always.
I will just highlight one thing, Mayor. I think it's important to highlight we plan to have the public hearing for the TID 9 district creation. That's part of the 51 West. So that's being planned for the public hearing at the Plan Commission on the 14th of March.
All right.
Mayor, there was one idea, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, nor do I think it would be purview of this committee. With the number of developments that are proposed and or ongoing in the city at the moment, maybe take a little bit of a review on as far as fire, EMS, and police coverage about what we're thinking with that, because even as these developments come online and get added into the tax base, there's that delay, there's that year or two delay before that actually gets added in, just to make sure that we're not undercutting ourselves for police coverage, let's say, before we can have the money to add officers potentially.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We've had some internal conversations, and you can see we're trying to be sensitive to that when we're working to the developers on the layouts and really even the products that they're proposing. But even with that, we know there's going to be additional services needed. So, I think that's a good point, and it does touch multiple departments as well. So yeah, those are conversations that we continue to have internally. And I would imagine, as every year there's going to be some discussion and potential, budget requests, whether, we grow or not, we always have needs. So we'll certainly take those into consideration as we're working through some of this. So, that's where, we're trying to understand, the timing and the phasing of some of these developments is helpful as well. So we try to extract that from, the developers as they're going through their plans to really have a better understanding, but knowing that, the market can really change things quickly. So there's kind of quite a bit to balance and juggle here as we're going through these projects, but certainly that's a point well taken.
Yeah, we just don't want to get out over our skis before we and then have a problem.
Oh, that happened a long time ago.
True.
But no,
that's what I want to avoid.
Yeah, no, and we do too. And we're also, trying to, balance that with the needs of the employers here in town and with the school district and other businesses, that all rely on, a certain amount of growth. So there's a lot there. Certainly I appreciate the diligence on the part of you guys as we go through these processes and raise these questions. Did you have anything for a future agenda, Rodney, other than the public hearing for the TIF?
Really just wanted to highlight that one. And that's the one that I think is of utmost importance. As was mentioned, the SIP from Lot 18 will likely be submitted. I don't know if we'll be in preparation for the March meeting, but certainly we understand that their interest in moving forward with that is forthcoming.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask about one more thing before we're through with this?
Sure.
As a side note, I just wanted to know that the proposed quick trip site on 51 and N, has there been any movement on that at all, or will we see that ever again?
That's probably a question for Tom, and I don't know if he's in a position to answer it or not. I mean, he's been working on that one. Are you still with us, Tom Mattson?
I think we can report at a staff level. We haven't seen any movement or materialization of another plan or any recent conversations that lead us to believe that that's moving forward at this point.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. I think we were just looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
I don't.